Natlan's teasers tell us a lot more than it seems on the surface. From the first 3, I think I've figured out why Mavwika's flames have an anemo color, why Auroron is siding with Capitano, and why there are only 6 types of Saurian when there are 7 elements, and it all has ties with the Mare Javari. But even though I've done a lot of research and I think I'm on the right track, this is speculative and using scraps of information, so don't take it too seriously. Since they're the first thing we saw from Natlan, let's start with the Saurians. The dragons in Natlan are called Saurians, and we have 6 types of them on this engraving, which likely means there are 6 tribes that work with them. Since Natlan is partly inspired by Mesoamerica, which had 7 major tribes, they probably started with 7 across the region until Vanessa's tribe left over 1,000 years ago, reducing their number to 6. So if each tribe is associated with a certain element of Saurian, what happened to the 7th type, and what element were they? We already have Geo, Hydro, and Dendro, which are represented by the first 3 characters we see, so they can be removed from the list. Then we see Mavwika, who seems to be able to transform into a phoenix, representing the Pyro Saurians. We can see the phoenix in this engraving. The giveaway is the little feather on the top of its head. We do potentially have another Saurian that flies by at the end of the first teaser, which may be represented by this engraving, as they have these sort of horn-looking things on them that could produce the flames from the engraving. As to the element, its main color is a reddish pink, with small blue and gold areas around the eyes, legs, and wings. I think it was originally either cryo or anemo, but living in Natlan caused it to evolve into being able to use pyro abilities. I'm leaning towards it being a cryo-saurian, as the 2 cryo characters we've seen have an overall pink or red color scheme, with blue eyes, matching this saurian visually. Strangely, you can make fire out of ice by carving the ice into a lens to magnify the sunlight, which may be similar to what its horns do. So far we have Geo, Hydro, Dendro, Pyro, and potentially Cryo. For the other 2, we have one more engraving. It's pretty vague, but looks like a Triceratops with a flame on its head. This could be Electro, with the flame being the product of Pyro and Electro reacting within its body to produce the flame. Yansan seems to be wearing the feathers of a thunderbird, so I'd say she's likely Electro too, accounting for every regular character's element we've seen that has a vision. In my latest Capitano video, I mentioned that I think Vanessa's tribe were based on the Xochimilco, which means flower field. Their lands would have been like a sea of flowers that I think became a sea of ashes after a black tide destroyed their home. This tide could have been a volcanic eruption caused by the Abyss, the Pyro Sovereign, or possibly someone related to the Anemo-Saurians. I say this because the Maori of New Zealand are one of Natlan's inspirations, and in 1886, a volcanic eruption from Mount Tarawera destroyed several nearby villages. Witnesses say they saw a dense black cloud from the volcano cover the villages, which could be the black tide the talking stick is referring to. There's also folklore that this eruption was caused by an evil wizard that lived on the mountain, and another of a local man witnessing a spirit canoe filled with people heading to the afterlife 11 days before the eruption, which the elders saw as an omen of doom. This reminded me of the Reaper riding a ghost ship that appeared to Remus just before Remoria sank into the ocean. I wonder if this Reaper appeared just before the eruption too. If they did, it could be that Sertologi was involved in this incident, as he fits the evil wizard archetype pretty well and is heavily associated with fire, meaning he might have wanted to steal the Pyro Dragon's authority for himself. Since the summer patch before a new nation gives us hints to what's coming up, the Pyro Sovereign may have been the main enemy of this war, possibly escaping its imprisonment from within the volcano and causing it to erupt. It may also explain Xbalanque being described as one entombed with the primal fire, if he had to seal himself underneath a volcano with the Sovereign to end the war. Scaramouche going up against the dragon might also hint that the battle started as one of Anemo versus Pyro, which I'll get into in a minute. The Merjavari is a place with no wind, so I was wondering what would cause that to happen. Then I realized if Vanessa's tribe were associated with the Anemo-Saurians and they all died during this event, it could explain the place now having no wind, fitting their absence in a symbolic and literal way. Vanessa's tribe would have had to move if their region became a sea of ashes, and you'd think they'd integrate with the other tribes, but it seems they didn't. Instead, they spent generations traveling to one of the furthest nations from Natlan on the other side of the continent, the nation of Mondstadt. So why would they go to Mondstadt of all places? It could be that one of their elders knew of a prophecy that the new Anemo sovereign could revive their Saurians and region, but over the generations this prophecy was lost. As Vanessa tells us, her tribe had to prioritize learning how to fight to survive, forgetting most of their traditions by the time they arrived in Mondstadt. I know Dvalin being the Anemo sovereign is a debated topic, but since he's the only Anemo dragon we know of, he's the only option we have right now. Dvalin was born in ancient times when the gods walked among us in their prime, which covers thousands of years, including when the Merjavari was created. This might be a stretch, but it could be that the battle that created the Merjavari also included the previous Anemo sovereign, and there's some mythology to back it up. In Maori mythology, 7 of the gods were brothers, and after 6 of them decided to separate their parents, the sky and the earth, the second oldest, known as Tawhiri Mate, the god of weather, became enraged, gathering his children, the winds and clouds of different kinds, and going to war against his brothers for what they'd done. They all fled or hid from him except for the god of war and humans, Tuma Tawenga. He embedded his feet into the earth to withstand his brother's storms, and cast spells to subdue them, making it safe for humans. Neither brother could defeat the other, and so Tawhiri Mate slowly withdrew. If we take that story as an inspiration, perhaps the previous Anemo sovereign was threatening the people of Natlan, and the Pyro sovereign teamed up with the previous Pyro Archon to defeat it, also killing most of the Anemo-Saurians in the process. Since the dragons embody their elemental themes, the previous Anemo sovereign would have likely rebelled against humanity more than most, as they represented the removal of the dragon's freedom by Celestia. And the Pyro sovereign may not just be angry all the time like I imagined at first. If it embodies war, then it could have a certain level of respect for humanity and their bravery in fighting the dragons. It probably still wants to defeat Celestia though. This battle of Anemo versus Pyro may also be represented in a place you wouldn't expect, Deshret's mausoleum. Ever since we saw them, I've kept the primal embers in my mind just in case they were related to Natlan, and it seems they might be. They're computer data looking things that activate primal torches, which look like a strange computerized fire. But even more interesting, the only thing that can destroy the primal embers are the giant fans, as the wind blows the embers out. So I wonder if this battle ended up killing, or at least severely weakening the Pyro Sovereign and most of the Pyrosaurians too. If the Anemo-Saurians were the aggressors of this war, and the cause of the Merjavari being created, it might explain why they're not only extinct, but have also been removed from the engravings as a sign that they've dishonored their nation. It may even explain why Vanessa's tribe didn't integrate with the others, as they probably would have been exiled for their tribe's actions. From Kachina's description, we hear of a pilgrimage of the return of the sacred flame, indicating that the sacred flame has gone missing or been reduced to embers. Since primal means first or original, and sacred relates to the gods who stole the powers of the dragons, the sacred and primal flames could be the same thing, and Mavuika is trying to reignite them. This may be why Xbalanque has to stay with the primal fire to prevent the embers from going out, or he could be using the last of these flames to contain the abyss. Either way, it'd mean only a tiny amount would be available to the Archon and the nation as a whole. This may explain why Marvwika's flames have what looks to be an Anemo element within them, possibly signifying that the spirits of the Anemo Saurians are helping to keep the weakened sacred flame alive, as wind can keep a fire going when it's just a breeze. As to why, it could be a form of repentance for the destruction their actions caused. These flames may be inspired by the turquoise flames of Xiuhtecuhtli, the Lord of Fire, also known as the Lord of Volcanoes and the personification of life after death. Though whether this refers to the Sovereign or the previous Archon is unknown right now. When Marvwika says, "What our eyes see ought to be our fate," she could be referring to the fire that she's using only being a representation or fraction of the full sacred fire they need to keep Natlan safe. And the line, "With our blood we'll forge our true fate," she probably means the tournament she holds every year, with the act of war able to collect people's faith, as Focalors did with the court trials to collect indemnitium. These tournaments could be based on the Aztec ceremonial flower wars that were held on sacred grounds and used as a way to pay tribute to the gods. They believed that the blood from these wars was needed to keep the earth and gods alive. Speaking of Anemo versus Pyro, Orreron and Capitano may have been on the Anemo tribe's side of this war. Anemo seems to be the element Orreron uses, though he looks like he has a mixture of Anemo and Electro, especially due to having one purple and one teal-colored eye. But the purple coloring could imply that he's partially corrupted by the Abyss instead, as he resembles a Hilichurl rogue with his cape. He seems to be teaming up with Capitano from what we can see, so he may disagree with Marvwika's way of ruling and want anything related to Celestia to be removed from Natlan, kind of like the Swanee from Chenyu Vale. He has a little ear or feather, signifying he could be a similar creature as them too, maybe even the last Anemo Saurian. Since I have a theory that Capitano was a dragon slayer, partially based on Sigurd and the Toltec ruler Ciacatl Quetzalcoatl, who had a wind jewel on his shield, it might explain Orreron's allegiance to him if they fought side by side back then. Marvwika seems to know Capitano too, from the little interaction we got, as she's almost teasing him like brothers and sisters do, indicating they've known each other for a long time. I've previously speculated that he had to kill the previous Pyro Archon due to them being corrupted by the Abyss during this war, but with what we've gone over, perhaps if the Abyss surfaced during the volcanic eruption, everyone put aside their differences to fight against it together. Either way, it must mean that even back then, Capitano was incredibly strong, and was probably the greatest warrior on the side of Vanessa's tribe. Him being a dragon slayer may also explain his prior exile, if he was the hero Tenoch, as even now Saurian hunting is frowned upon, as we see with Kenich's description. It'd also fit with him visiting Mondstadt as the first Knight of Boreas to check on Vanessa's tribe, but I've got a whole video on Capitano going over all this, so I won't bore you with repeating it all. Marvwika is based on the Maori goddess of fire, called Mahuika. She was the younger sister of the goddess of death, and was the grandmother of the hero Maui, who obtained the secret of making fire from her. Since it'd be weird if we had a repeat of A and Makoto, I think this may hint that the previous Archon became known as the goddess of death, and Marvwika was her Saurian companion, sort of like having Yai become the Archon of Inazuma. Alternatively, we might get a different personality within Marvwika that's much more violent, known to people as the goddess of death. Since she looks to be partly inspired by Fu Hua, I'm hoping we get our version of Senti if this is the route they take. After coming to the idea that the missing Saurians are Anemo, and it representing freedom and time, reviving them to bring balance to Natlan's elemental energies could be a part of the incandescent ode of resurrection, reigniting the dying embers of the sacred flame and the Pyro Sovereign in the process. One last thing before I go. Since Dvalin seems to be the new Anemo Sovereign, and he's pretty much our friend, we could get a surprise assist from him when things are looking hopeless, and he could even play a pivotal role in reviving the Pyro Sovereign, forming an alliance with each other as his predecessor failed to do, and fulfilling the prophecy. I speculate Vanessa's tribe traveled to Mondstadt 4. It'd even fit Natlan's tagline of Incandescent Ode of Resurrection if Venti helped out, as an ode is a poem paying tribute to something. Let me know what your thoughts are on Natlan and what we've got coming up. My brain is overloaded from trying to piece all this together in a way that makes sense, so I think I'm going to lie down for a while. If you're still here, thank you very much for watching. Good luck on your wishes, or resisting pulling if you're saving for Natlan, and I hope you have a wonderful day.